The Dutch Grand Prix is over, and Oscar Piastri won the Grand Prix, leading every lap and was generally faultless. Meanwhile, teammate Lando Norris, sadly for him, suffered a power unit failure. But now, F1 is moving from the Dutch Grand Prix to Monza and the Temple of Speed, the Italian Grand Prix, which means that once again it is time for my preview and predictions. This is a series where I will be previewing and then at the end of the video giving out my early predictions for the Grand Prix. If you enjoy the video then please hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content. Now, let's get into the video. As usual, I'll be talking about the top teams later on, so please do stick around for that. Yep, F1 is moving on from the Dutch Grand Prix, and next up is Monza, and Monza is the home race for Ferrari. It is a race where we will see the Tifosi out in force, and the Tifosi will be expecting a Ferrari victory, but based on this season, it could be a lot easier said than done. It is called the Temple of Speed, and that is because the circuit layout means that straight line performance is the name of the game. The circuit is filled with very long straights and a couple of tight chicanes in between them. These chicanes though are some of the most famous in the sport. Turn 1 and Turn 2 is the incredibly tight Rettifilo chicane, and it has been home to some major shunts over the years, such as Verstappen and Hamilton during the 2021 Grand Prix. The next chicane is the Della Roggia chicane, which is where Oscar Piastri overtook Lando Norris around the outside last year to almost win the Grand Prix before doing that second stop. And the final chicane is the Ascari chicane. This is the fastest chicane on the circuit. And of course, the other corners are iconic too, such as the Curve Legrand, the two Lesmos, and of course the Parabolica. And that is pretty much Monza. Because of the layout, the teams will be bringing the least amount of downforce of the season because they don't want the drag to slow them down the straights, and they don't really need the downforce for the corners. Because of the chicanes and the huge braking zones, Monza is a real limited circuit. Teams will need to be good on the brakes and on traction. Because of this, I expect that in the midfield, Williams will be very strong, whereas Aston Martin will struggle. And for the top teams, Red Bull will definitely struggle, but I do expect good things from Ferrari. Tyre wear around Monza is typically very low, and the pit lane loss time is very high, due to the high speed down the straight, and also the length of the pit lane as well. Because of this, we don't tend to see too many pit stops. Also, with low tyre wear, Pirelli will be bringing softer tyres, and this year it is no different, as the C3 is the hard tyre, the C4 is the medium tyre, and the C5 is the soft compound tyre. Even so, we did still see somewhat of a multi-stop race last year, as there was a total of 30 pit stops. This means that it was a mixture of 1 stop and 2 stops, where the drivers used the medium and the hard tyres. Mclaren, for example, tried the 1 stop but failed and were forced onto a 2 stop, whereas Charles Leclerc, who eventually won last year's race, did a 1 stop race. This year, I expect that we should see a 1 stop, as I don't think we will see too many drivers struggling with tyre wear like we did last year. The tyres in general this season are a little bit more robust, so 1 stop should be okay. Even though Monza is filled with very long straights, overtaking is not actually very easy, and that is down to the low downforce, meaning that the DRS is not as effective. Not only that, but we do also end up with DRS trains, which does not help overtaking. But even so, last year, we did see 39 on-track overtakes. To help with overtaking, the Monza circuit features 2 DRS zones. The first DRS zone is down the pit straight, heading to the Rettifilo, and the second DRS zone is on the exit of the Lesmos, down the back straight, heading towards the Ascari chicane. Last year, the pole position lap time was a 1 minute 19.327, set by Lando Norris in the Mclaren. During that pole lap, Norris reached a top speed of 347 km per hour, which is about 215 miles per hour. In the Grand Prix itself, the race fastest lap was also set by Lando Norris, and Lando did a fastest lap of a 1:21.432 on the final lap of the race. I just want to say if you're enjoying the video so far, then I would really appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content. Now though, let's get back to the video and let's talk about Red Bull. For Red Bull then, they are heading into a bit of a rough patch with the upcoming races. The Italian Grand Prix and the Azerbaijan Grand Prix are two of their weakest circuits, and I can see them struggling like they did last year. Last year, the lower downforce circuits such as Monza and Baku were really difficult for them as they struggled with the real limited circuits, and they've not really improved on that this year. Meaning that the lower downforce mixed with the tight chicanes shouldn't suit their car. The Red Bull strengths are in higher speed corners, like we see at Suzuka and Silverstone, not like what we see at Monza. Not only that, but Red Bull has been a bit harder on their tyres this year, and because of that, they could potentially struggle a little bit with their rear tyres. Max Verstappen has been doing all he possibly can to stay in the mix for this year's World Championship, but with these two races, he is really going to struggle. Teammate Yuki Tsunoda may also find himself getting eliminated in the first part of qualifying, meaning that he's going to have a lot of work to do in the Grand Prix. And for Red Bull, I think this is a race they just need to get through so that they can put it behind them before stronger races come further down the line. For Mercedes then, they are going to be hoping for something similar to Montreal, which also was a circuit with plenty of straights followed by chicanes when they won that Grand Prix on that day with George Russell and also got a podium with Kimi Antonelli. But honestly, I don't see that being the case at Monza. That being said, they should be ahead of Red Bull, but I can see the Mclaren and even the Ferrari being a bit stronger, as Ferrari always brings something special to Monza. Russell had a pretty solid finish, all things considered, at Zandvoort, especially after contact with Charles Leclerc, which in my opinion was just hard racing, as Leclerc overtook him around the outside at the chicane. Teammate Kimi Antonelli, however, also had contact with Charles Leclerc, but unlike George Russell, his was not a racing incident, as he took Leclerc out of the Grand Prix after understeering into him. Antonelli had a chance at a great result, but it was washed away with that incident. In Monza, he will be looking to try and just keep things neat and tidy. For Ferrari then, the Italian Grand Prix is their home race, and the Tifosi will be out in force to support them, and they cannot disappoint. The Dutch Grand Prix should have been really weak for them, but they did do better than expected, until it all went horribly wrong. Honestly, I didn't think they would get both cars into Q3, let alone a P6 and P7 after qualifying. In the race though, things went sideways very quickly. Immediately after Leclerc stopped for fresh tyres, teammate Lewis Hamilton dropped the car and crashed out of the Grand Prix. Then, later on, Leclerc put on a beautiful move on George Russell around the outside, but that was wiped out by Kimi Antonelli at the same spot where Lewis Hamilton crashed earlier in the Grand Prix, and at the end of that, Ferrari left with 0 points. But now, moving on to the Italian Grand Prix, it is a circuit where they should do well. Ferrari all through this era have been pretty strong when it comes to circuits with big braking zones. Not only this, but they also tend to do well when the corners are very similar and the circuit doesn't feature many bumps, both of which is true with this circuit. Not only this, but I do think Ferrari tries more than others when it comes to the Monza Special downforce package. Not only that, but this is the place where Charles Leclerc is pretty strong. He has 2 Grand Prix wins, winning in 2019 and also last year's race. Not only that, but teammate Lewis Hamilton also has 5 wins at this circuit. Ferrari at the very least will be aiming for the podium if all goes well. And if all goes perfectly, they will even be hoping for victory, but maybe not with Lewis Hamilton, as he has a 5-place grid penalty heading into this Grand Prix. Finally, for McLaren then, the World Championship has taken a huge hit for Lando Norris, as he retired with mechanical failure at the Dutch Grand Prix. He was looking set to take home 18 points, but it was not to be, and now he potentially faces a grid penalty for the Italian Grand Prix as well. Meanwhile, teammate Oscar Piastri took a huge step towards becoming the world champion with a fantastic drive at Zandvoort, and this was one of Norris's strongest tracks based on history. But as the weekend transpired, it was all Lando Norris, until it wasn't, and Oscar Piastri got the pole lap, and he led the race from start to finish. And now Piastri has moved a lot closer, as he now has a gap of over 30 points to Lando Norris. But now, moving on to the Italian Grand Prix. At least over one lap in qualifying, this might not actually be their strongest track. This is not the kind of circuit where you would really expect them to be as strong. The strength of the Mclaren is their ability at medium speed corners, and well, other than the Lesmos, Monza doesn't really have any. Not only that, but last year we saw McLaren falter and struggle with tyre wear compared to Ferrari. Now, I don't think they will make the same mistake again, especially as the McLaren car this season in general has been very strong on tyre wear compared to last season. And the battle between Piastri and Norris is, or was, hotting up, but now there is a big gap between Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. And if Lando has to take a grid penalty for Monza, well, it looks like it's already set then that he will drop even more points to Oscar Piastri. But for Oscar Piastri, he cannot rest. Even though he now has a sizable gap, he still needs to perform at every single race. And if he does, then he will definitely be the world champion in 2025. So with that in mind then, what are my early predictions for the Italian Grand Prix? Well, I think that the top midfield team and midfield driver will be Alex Albon and Williams, as this is the perfect circuit for Williams to really extract all of their performance. They do really well with low downforce circuits, and well, Monza is about as low downforce as it gets. But what about pole position and the top 5 in the Grand Prix? Well, for pole position, I'm going to go for Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari to take pole position in front of the Tifosi and give them something to celebrate. But what about the top 5 in the Grand Prix? Well, in P5, I'm actually going to go for Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, even though I don't think Red Bull will be that strong here. But he has going for him is Lewis Hamilton has a 5-place penalty. In P4, it will be George Russell in the Mercedes. P3 will be Lando Norris, even if he has to take a 10-place grid penalty. P2 will be Charles Leclerc, and I'm going to go for Oscar Piastri to once again win the Grand Prix. But those are my thoughts. The question is, what do you guys think will happen? In the comment section down below, please do let me know. And as always, comment, leave a like and subscribe for more F1 content. Thank you all so much for watching.